Hello and welcome to another Atypical Philosopher video with myself, Jonathan MS Pierce. This is a Ukraine War Update Extra video where I give you those juicy nuggets to give you a greater geopolitical understanding and context to this war. And we have lots to talk about as ever today. Where am I going to start? Zelensky's visit to Washington and to the Congress the other day. That's hugely important, but I've not mentioned it the last couple of days because I've had so much else to talk about. Well, where should we start? Again, awful lot to cover with this visit. Uh, Zelensky. So, first of all, why is he going? Well, why did he go? And it was only a very relatively short visit. He went, and it was also not given too much telegraphing. It wasn't announced too much in advance for security reasons. Very tightly controlled, because obviously, Russia have a habit of killing people in countries like, for example, the UK in Salisbury and Litvinenko, and they have very long tendrils of doom. But there you go. So he went over and ostensibly trying to forge a relationship with Joe Biden as a president. That's very useful. That's a tactic that's been used before. The Second World War, Churchill going over to America to do that, spend 3 weeks over there doing that kind of face to face rapport that can be built up that allows you leverage at the end of the day, allows you to get things that you want. I mean, that's what Zelensky's doing. That's what politics is getting what you want for your country or for the benefit of the world. And Zelensky's gone over to America to try and get things that he wants, which is arms, political support, other sort of financial and military support, so on and so forth. Now, there were already these ones in a bag, a $1.8 billion one, and then this massive Omni part of the Omni sort of provision, a huge sort of 45, $48 billion thing. But that was already in the making before he went over. That wasn't like he went over there and then that came about. But this is very much well, some people think it was actually largely to try and curry favor with the GOP. So the Republicans in America are broadly in support of Ukraine and the war, particularly in the Senate. When it comes to the House, there is slightly less support for the Republicans, and there's this arguably growing or at least loud contingent of predominantly, again, MAGA Republicans who have been very different in their approach to Ukraine and the war. And we will talk about that in a minute. I don't want to annoy Republicans watching this, but you have to admit that the Republican Party is at the moment quite an interesting and varied church, if you like. It's a broad umbrella that can take into account, your old school fiscal conservatives who aren't really worried about social politics so much, and then you've got libertarians, and you got this, and you got that, and you got all sorts, and then you've got quite a loud, very staunch, almost fundamentalist, very conservative right, and some of that contingent are not so pro Ukraine, and so that's part of his remit, I think. So I've just highlighted a few things that he said in the speech. And for example, the world is too interconnected. Well, let's start from the beginning. The struggle will define in what world our children and grandchildren will live, and then their children and grandchildren. It will define whether it will be a democracy of Ukrainians and for Americans, for all, he said. This battle cannot be frozen or postponed. It cannot be ignored, hoping that the ocean or something else will provide a protection. The world is too interconnected and interdependent to allow someone to stand aside. Our two nations are allies in this battle, and next year will be important. At the point when Ukrainian urge and American resolve must guarantee the future for our common freedom, the freedom of people who stand for their values. He's got a very good way of, and he did this when he was doing all those virtual speeches to different parliaments around the world, and whoever he's speaking to, he would know what the kind of triggers were for them that would get them to go, oh yeah, absolutely. So when he spoke to the British Parliament, UK, he was like very much pulling on Churchill speeches and talking about things to do with the Second World War, to do with Britain and Churchill. And so he knows how to get into the psyche of his audience, and he does that really, really well. And so with an earlier speech in March to the US, he talked a lot about Pearl Harbor, September the 11th, 9/11, and other American sort of tragedies. So, just remember it. Our country experiences the same every day right now. Just getting into that American psyche. So he's just very good at that. And another example is this: and this is what he said in Congress. Just like the brave American soldiers who held their lines and fought back Hitler's forces during the Christmas of 1944. So there's a specificity to what he's saying there. Brave Ukrainian soldiers are doing this same to Putin's forces this Christmas, he said to a standing ovation. Ukraine holds its lines and will never surrender. Again, that's almost Churchillian. And we will never surrender. I just want to break into Iron Maiden, though. He says, he continues to say, I believe in us and our alliance. Ukraine never asked the American soldiers to fight on our land instead of us. I assure you that Ukrainian soldiers can perfectly operate American tanks and planes themselves, he said to some laughs and applause. This is the idea that, hey, we don't want your soldiers. Don't worry. We don't want your soldiers to come over here and die. We'll do the fighting. We just need the equipment. Your money is not this to me. This here is the single most important thing he says, or on the money thing he said, so to speak. Your money is not charity. It's an investment in the global security and democracy that we handle in the most responsible way, he said, also to applause and cheers. That's it. That's the one for me, because that's spot on. That's my opinion. That's the biggest reason we have to support Ukraine and keep supporting them. Very much so. So on and so forth. ABC News Will Steakin, because I'm taking this from ABC News, estimates that Zelenskyy, who has broad bipartisan support on the Hill, received 18 standing ovations during his speech. Republican Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy, the likely next House Speaker, stood and clapped along with other lawmakers at nearly every interval. Some other Republicans, including Representative Jim Jordan, not a fan myself, Andrew Clyde, Matt Gaetz, definitely not a fan of Matt Gaetz, and Lauren Boebert, hugely not a fan of Lauren Boebert, but that's my personal political opinions, stood for less than half of the ovations, but was seen repeatedly clapping as well. Okay, good. Gaetz appeared to be on his phone through the speech. At one point, he showed Boebert something with a smile. Gaetz has been critical of future Ukrainian aid, while McCarthy has called for Republicans to ensure accountability on how it is used. And just to play on that point, this is a piece in the UK's independent newspaper. Zelensky's visit to Washington is his last chance to win over a skeptical Republican Party. And it talks about here that in the Senate, such plans remain largely uncontroversial. This is support for Ukraine and the sort of aid plans with the powers that be. In a speech from the upper chamber's floor on Wednesday, Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell pointed out that the omnibus appropriations package negotiated between the White House and congressional leaders contained more funding for Ukraine than the Biden administration had asked for. And he said he looks forward to hearing from the Ukrainian people's elected leader at a critical moment in their struggle for their safety and sovereignty against Russia's unhinged aggression. So this is great. This is bipartisan support in the Senate, at least, where you've got generally, people are behind Ukraine and support for Ukraine. However, when it comes to the House, the People's House, it says here, it's a different kettle of fish. So the incoming GOP leader may prove, so that's Kevin McCarthy, a significant stumbling block to the road to continued US backing for Kyiv's efforts to repel the Russian invaders. A previous generation of Republicans would have thought it unthinkable to deny aid to a Ukrainian government in a fight for the country's life against Russia. In December 1994, then US Ambassador to Hungary, Donald Blinken, so that's Antony Blinken's father, attending a signing ceremony for the Budapest Memorandum on Security Assurances, an agreement between the US, the UK, Russia, China, France, and Ukraine, and Ukraine, plus two other ex-Soviet republics, Kazakhstan and Belarus, under which Kyiv gave up the Soviet-built nuclear arsenal it had inherited when the Soviet Union dissolved in exchange for security assurances from the nuclear power signatories. That's hugely important, that. And in fact, arguably, if Ukraine still had nuclear missiles, this wouldn't be happening at the moment. You've got this interesting scenario where Russia promised to keep Ukraine secure, and then 30 years later have invaded them. Yeah, but Republicans at the time supported that. Okay, they were hugely in support. It's not a problem, but this invasion has been different. There's this growing kind of schism, arguably, in the GOP, in the Republican Party. So while some in the GOP, most notably Mitch McConnell and others in the upper chamber, um, were keen on approving as much assistance to Kyiv as possible, others have adopted the opposite position out of a knee-jerk desire to oppose anything Mr. Biden and the Democrats appear to be for. That's a really interesting point here. And in fact, I wish I'd highlighted that in super red. Yeah, there we go. Because I wonder whether that's what's going on. So and I don't want to be anti-Trumpy or whatever, when Trump came into power in 2016, he set about trying to undo things Obama put in. And initially, this is my opinion, but initially it wasn't about the politics of the policies. It was about Obama did this. Obama was really popular. I don't like Obama. I want to be anti-Obama. Therefore, I'm going to undo a bunch of things he did. I don't care whether it's good or bad. Iran, undo that, throw that out the window. Environmental legislation, get rid of that. He was onto that. Universal healthcare, let's have a go at that. All these things that Obama put in, and it wasn't so much that he had got something to put in its place or thought about this in any great depth. It's just like, I want to do the opposite of what he wants. So I think what some of the GOP are doing in this segment of people who are anti-Ukraine is not so much about Ukraine. It could be anything. But I think they're looking at Biden and the Democrats being hugely in support of this, and they're saying, we don't want to be part of that. We are reactionary. We're contrarian. So we are doing the opposite of what these guys want. As the Independent goes on, when news broke out of Mr. Zelensky's imminent arrival in Washington, the ex-US president's eldest son, Donald Trump Jr., took to Twitter to denounce the Ukrainian leader as basically, quote, basically an ungrateful international welfare queen, citing his comments in Bakhmut. Others, including extremist Republican members such as Georgia Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene, interesting they call her extremist, have leveled baseless accusations of corruption against Mr. Zelensky and called for a halt to all aid to Kyiv, plus an audit of what has been delivered thus far. That didn't get through, but she did want that. Another Florida representative, Matt Gaetz, for whom I have a little time, said last month that he would not lend his vote to approve $1 more for Ukraine's defense, consistent with the position he adopted just days after the war began when he asked attendees at the Conservative Political Action Conference, CPAC, why should Americans have to pay the cost of freedom elsewhere when our leaders won't stand up for our freedom here? So on and so forth. So what it's saying here is that this is about this visit of Zelensky is about trying to garner support from these Republicans to try and at least appear in a positive PR light. Putative incoming House Speaker, California Republican Kevin McCarthy has gone so far as to say there will be no blank check for Ukraine in future spending packages and has decried the Senate's decision to include support for Kyiv in the omnibus appropriations bill set for passage on Wednesday. Top advisor to Trump, Mr. Stephen Miller, this is important, has also called for the GOP to use support for Ukraine as a bargaining chip to extract significant policy concessions from Democrats. Very interesting statement that. Now I want to take you to what Zelensky was dressed in. So let's just talk about Zelensky's attire. There's a couple of things to note here. It's his identity. Wearing that sort of olive green combat fatigues and whatnot. That is how we know Zelensky is what he's worn ever since he's come into the public eye at the beginning of this war. Yes, we could dig out old footage of him wearing suits and looking like a normal politician. This is how we know him. I wouldn't expect him to look any different here. But this is about PR management, and this is some savvy, savvy identity, I suppose, shining your identity onto others in a meaningful way. I'm probably like screwing up my words here. That's my MS talking. Um, what I'm trying to say is that he is telling people by being dressed like that he is uh, under threat from an aggressive oppressor, that he is at war. Zelensky is going over to meet people in suits and he's dressed in combat fatigues and he's saying, I'm like this because my country is being attacked by Russia, the second greatest army in the world. We need your help. I need your help. I am not safe back there. This is how I dress every day because we are at war. And I'm coming to you here, and I tell you what, I am still at war. Just because I'm not back over there, it doesn't mean war is not continuing. So when I come to meet you, I'm telling you something. And this is what I'm saying. Anyway, conservatives, in the true sense of the word, traditionalists, were raging about this. It's like, seriously, you've not got anything better to think about. Donald Trump Jr. calling him a welfare queen. But when it comes to how he's dressed, this is from Benny Johnson, who is a journalist for Newsmax. So Newsmax is this upstart news organization that is pandering to that really, really conservative right in America. OANN and Newsmax are these two even further to right than Fox are. And Benny Johnson says, this ungraceful piece of shit does not have the decency to wear a suit in the White House. No respect. The country that is funding his survival. I think he means no respect for the country that is funding his survival. Tracksuit wearing Eastern European con man mafia. Our leaders fell for it. They have disgraced us all. What an incredible insult. Ugh. You think this is an incredible insult that someone will come to you dressed in military fatigues as a sign that they are under existential threat from another country and they need as much help as they can get. They're crying out for your help. And you think the first thing you think is tracksuit wearing Eastern European con man mafia, because that's not grossly insulting and disrespectful. That's just, don't talk to me about respect the country, respect my country, and then just wrap this guy up in Eastern European con man mafia, as if all of Eastern Europe is some kind of con man mafia. Eastern Europe should be pretty pissed off with this. Benny Johnson, you can just take a running jump as far as I'm concerned. That just, as you can tell, I'm annoyed. I know there's war, but Zelensky isn't under fire, tweeted financial commentator Peter Schiff. Now, this isn't the first time Schiff has commentated. I think I reported on him talking about Zelensky wearing that at another meeting. I think he had a go at Zelensky. I'm sure in one of my earlier videos, he had a go at Zelensky for doing a virtual speech to Congress. Probably it's probably Congress, dressed like that, and he had a go at him then. And I gave him short shrift then. He flew to the US aboard a US government private jet, arrived at the White House in a chauffeur-driven SUV, yet showed up wearing a sweatshirt. Who cares? It's better than a T-shirt, which I think it must have been what he attacked him for before or something. But I still maintain the proper attire is a suit. Says whom? I didn't realise that there was a rule about this, and that clothing, there was some objective law about proper attire. Now, yeah, of course, that doesn't mean there isn't, like, you couldn't go naked, but I just find it interesting that Peter Schiff is the arbitrator of clothing sensibilities. Zelensky arrives in the White House to demand the support and more support than 45 billion aid in the omnibus bill, tweeted Wendell Husabo, a writer for the conservative news website Breitbart. For 45 billion, show some respect and rent a suit. Zelensky flies all the way to the US, but still can't put on a suit, Breitbart politics editor Emma Jo Morris tweeted. Circus. Zelenskyy can pose in fashion magazines during the war, but he dresses in war casual to the White House, tweeted writer and podcaster VF Castro. Zelenskyy can't wear a suit to the White House, tweeted Libby Emmons, editor-in-chief at conservative news website The Post Millennial. So on and so forth. It's just whatever. Um, Not all commentators agreed. However, Rick Wilson, Republican strategist and Lincoln Project co-founder, so that's Lincoln Project, a kind of anti-MAGA, said in a tweet that those lashing out at Zelenskyy over BS about money or respect or whether he wears a suit were actually supporters of Russian President Vladimir Putin and want America on the other side in this war. And David A. French, a senior editor of the Dispatch. What a lovely guy this is. Right. I've debated David A. French on radio. You can go and check it out. It's actually on my YouTube channel. I debated him on cancel culture. And he's a conservative and he's an evangelical Christian, but he's also a really decent human and a lovely guy. So I disagree on him on virtually everything, but he's actually someone that likes to reach across the aisle. In fact, he ran for US president back in sometime 2012 time. I don't know, but yeah, super lovely guy. Completely disagree with him, but he called out this, called the critiques of Zelensky's attire absurd. He noted the reason behind their clothes was to serve as a reminder that he's coming straight from a war. And he related it to former British Prime Minister Winston Churchill not wearing a suit when he visited the White House during World War II. Yeah, don't hear the remarks about Winston Churchill coming from those similar Republicans. And in fact, this is what David French actually said there. And this is Trent Telenko. Haters going to hate. Haters like the TV makeup of a $5,000 power suit, symbol driven DC courtier class. Ukrainian President Zelensky's attire was note perfect for both the wartime Ukrainian public and a portion of the US public paying attention to the Russo Ukrainian war. And then he's quoting David French's tweet. This is, there you go, Winston Churchill. And there's the evidence that, hey, other people have done that. And you don't get Republicans, slagging off Winston Churchill. So anyway, not all Republicans, just these certain types. Please don't call me out on that. I'm a liberal lefty. But I think there are certain people that do need to be called out for this kind of rhetoric. And the last thing I want to say on this Washington visit, and this will be a standalone video in and of itself, and I'll do the rest of my extra video later, is to do, this is super, super important, is to do with why America aren't giving Ukraine bigger, better weapons. And Biden himself, dealt with this explicitly during a press conference. Now, my understanding here is there's some sort of cryptic language going on here, and he didn't give the full suite of answers, but he did address this very explicitly. So now you say that this is a quote from, this is from the usmc.gov website, just a transcript of the press conference. So there's Biden saying, now you say, why don't we just give Ukraine everything there is to give? Well, for two reasons. One, there's an entire alliance that is critical to stay with Ukraine. And the idea that we would give Ukraine material that is fundamentally different than is already going there would have a prospect of breaking up NATO and breaking up the European Union and the rest of the world. We're going to give Ukraine what it needs to be able to defend itself, to be able to succeed and succeed in the battlefield. Okay, so let's unpick this first part. That's very interesting. And I think it's saying that there are some people in Europe, this is how Ukraine, the latest podcast, interpreted this, is that there are some in Europe who don't want to give so much stuff to Ukraine, that the more that America gives, these big pieces of kit, the more strain that puts on Europe to kind of keep up with the Joneses and do the same thing. And there might not be that kind of will for some of those European nations. I'm not wholly sure about this, but I don't think you'd see a breakup of NATO or the European Union and the rest of the world. I think what you would see maybe is that this then becomes a war between America and Russia. and it's the old Cold War reignited. What America wants to do is do stuff fully within the context of the EU and other Western allies doing things for Ukraine. Because if America start pulling away, the US pulls away from what Europe are doing, and it's all about them giving these amazing things, then Russia will look at that and say, which is kind of what they're doing the Patriot thing, which is to say, I told you, well, kind of what they're doing with the Zelenskyy going to America thing. This is how some of the propagandists are selling this in Russia, which is, I told you it's all about America. I told you this is a war between us and the US. And there you go. Zelensky's gone to America, and they're going to give all this stuff. We are fighting against America rather than we are fighting against NATO. We're fighting against the rest of the world, the EU, all of these people combined. It's just singling out the US. And if the US give over and above what other countries do and other organizations do, then it does separate the US from everyone else and gives Russia a kind of a PR wedge there. And the other piece of this is, continues Biden, you may recall, one of the reasons why I have spent, well, I won't tell you the calculation, but I spent several hundred hours face to face with our European allies and the heads of state of those countries, and making the case as to why it was overwhelmingly in their interest that they continue to support Ukraine. Now, this is this idea, and this is what Ukraine later was talking about, is the idea that, yeah, America are fully behind Ukraine, but some of these other European nations aren't. And although the EU is really in support of Ukraine, the EU is made up of a whole wide variety of nations, and some are less supportive than others, some are less able than others to support, so on and so forth. And Joe Biden has, it seems, at least, if we are reading into the inference here, it seems that Joe Biden has been working really hard to convince an awful lot of global players to come along with them. And again, if he overplays his hand, then he's not going to get the buy-in from these other players. They understand it fully, he says, but they're not looking to go to war with Russia. They're not looking for a third world war. And I think it can all be avoided by making sure that Ukraine is able to succeed in the battlefield. So anyway, there's more to say, but I probably already said too much. Thank you. Uh, he has said quite a bit there, and he's probably been a bit off the cuff. But there's an awful lot he hasn't said. And I think we still have the question. I think it's an unresolved question. I would still want to say, yeah, but why don't you give them ATACMS? Why don't you there you go. Just as one thing. Why don't you give them long range missiles? Even if it's not ATACMS, something else. What is the issue here? I don't think that answer does enough for me. But I think it's interesting that he tried to answer that question, because he wasn't. This, as far as I can work out, this was him just saying that rather than someone questioning him with that. He's presented that question himself. He says, "Now you say why don't we just give everything to Ukraine?" Right? No one actually asked him that, so he's come up with that. But it is a question that is on the tip of everyone's tongues. But I still don't think he's answered that adequately for me. And so I am still left thinking, yeah, but really, why don't you give him? Because actually, it's not the, in my opinion, maybe there are two different things going on here. Maybe he's talking about main battle tanks and F-16s, or F fighter jets, American fighter jets, and all this stuff, as well as missiles. For me, it's just like, do you know what? Long range missiles for me is a game changer. You just give them a shed load of long range missiles. You can forget your jets. You can forget your tanks. I'm not really that bothered about that. Long range missiles, that changes everything. Honestly, that changes everything. And so I think that's still within the remit of, or within the scope of what America already providing. And I don't think you will get Russia grumbling, but I don't think they're going to press a nuclear button. So anyway, let me know what you think. I'm going to leave it there and leave the rest for another video. But that's my Zelenskyy goes to Washington video. It's going to annoy a bunch of Republicans and conservatives who are watching this, no doubt. Tell me why. But my concerns are genuine concerns. I mean, these are concerns of GOP politicians and lawmakers. They are saying these things, and people are attacking him for his attire are saying these things, and Donald Trump Jr. is saying these things. And Zelensky did go to America partly to try and curry favor with these people. So I'm not sure that I'm really being sort of biased and liberal and all that. I think these are genuine issues. Um, Let me know what you think. Anyway, question everything, particularly yourselves. Always. Thank you for your support, and I'll catch you in my next video. And just before I go, thank you so much to the members of my new ATP Geopolitics. Yonanis Kiliouris has come over from ATP Philosopher and moved his membership over here. Thank you. Kevin Alexander, Ian Ratner, absolute legends, Geopol thinkers. I appreciate that. You can join the channel if you so desire. Thanks for all your help, everybody.